Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs and earth blobs and sparkly blobs, or whatever form you are coming into this moment with me here. I am here for it. You don't have to be a blob. I know some people feel very uncomfortable when I say blob, and I totally get that. That's really valid. And also, that's just one of the ways that I like to connect with myself and embrace my weirdness in my life. And I know so many of you also connect with it. But the point being that we're here to get to know ourselves and to get curious about ourselves and to open our own minds toward ourselves and our strange longings and desires in this life. And we are going to be exploring Gemini season today, and what a fun archetype to explore, what a fun season to explore. I think we're really needing this kind of energy in the world right now. And I know that Gemini is always the villain in the pop astrology meme world. We love a good Gemini joke. We love to pick on Gemini. And it's really funny because throughout my life, I have been surrounded by Geminis. They always end up being my best friends, the people that I end up talking on the phone with about life, about ideas, about like what's coming up. They are the most reliable friend to workshop ideas, to ask interesting questions, to have a nuanced discussion. And I actually think with Gemini, the archetype, the energetic, this idea of the cosmic twins and the mutable air energetic that we're working here with Gemini, one of the challenges with it actually is that Gemini really asks us at its core to hold multiple things as true at the same time. It really makes me think about that third way of seeing. And, Gemini is often described in this kind of two-faced way where it's about these twins, it's about these two different modalities, and that kind of dual world view, except that I think that Gemini, the archetype, is actually challenging us to challenge the duality itself and kind of look at things from so many multifaceted places. And that can mean that we're not staying stuck on one thing. We're not making up our mind and saying, this is the one thing. Now, of course, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, keeping our minds open and being in that kind of mutable air energetic where we can kind of change our minds and go roll with the punches is a really beautiful thing. It can also leave us feeling a little bit like we don't really know what is what anymore, and everything's kind of relative. So it's a really interesting energetic to work with. But I do think, this is the sign ruled by Mercury along with Virgo, and that lends Gemini this really powerful ability to weave between realms. Mercury is this messenger energetic, and even the planet itself, very quick moving and always weaving between retrograde and direct. And Mercury, the messenger, weaving between the underworld and the human world and the worlds of the celestial beings. I think for me, Gemini is really about being able to move between different modalities of ourselves, and we can hold it all: the shadow, the darkness, the heaviness, the skepticism. We can also hold the playful, the light. We can hold the part of ourselves that doesn't want to do the thing and the part of ourselves that does want to do the thing. And that's part of what's so fascinating and endlessly fascinating about Gemini's energy. I think also it just kind of challenges, and we're going to be talking about this when we talk about the themes of the Gemini energetic, as we prepare for this Gemini season. It challenges the way we kind of think about this. This is the right decision for me. This is the wrong decision for me. Of course, there are times when we have those moments where it's just so clear, this is definitely right for me. This is definitely wrong for me. I think it challenges, though, this idea that we have to make some perfect, correct decision, and that the goal of life is to come to a conclusion about ourselves, about our life path, and judge it and say, this was the correct thing, this was the incorrect thing. And it kind of opens up our mind to the way we're thinking about ourselves, the way we're demanding of ourselves to make perfect choices, to intuitively know everything we need to do next, and to take every step correctly every time. I think Gemini for me is about inventiveness, inventive thinking, being open and willing to experiment, of course, thoughtfully, and of course, taking ourselves and others into account, of course, but being open to allowing ourselves to maybe make some mistakes, maybe not always make the perfect choices, but in that process, in that experimentation, really come to know ourselves that much better. So with all of those thoughts about Gemini in mind, I want to talk about this particular Gemini season, get us all set up, talk about some of the intuitive themes I think that are going to be super important, a few of the transits that I think are really interesting for this Gemini season, and then we'll pull some cards at the end. So let's get ourselves set up for a beautiful Gemini season. Grab your tea, your coffee. Let's get into it. I've always loved the way seasons move into each other and the way they support and help each other and illuminate different energetics for each of us, because we just move through that Taurus energy. So much about what feeds my root system, what feels true to me, what do I want to cultivate over a long time, how do I want to come back into my body in a way that feels true for me, what does that look like, reassessing how we take care of those roots that really feed us, diving into that slower, more stable energetic, allowing that to fuel us a little bit, allowing us to ask deeper questions about what home and value is in our lives. It's a really, really beautiful, nurturing energy. And then that sets us right up to go into the mutable air energetic of Gemini, floating on that free wind and seeing where it takes us. And Gemini is so wildly different from Taurus, right? But that's the whole thing. Through taking care of that root system and feeling that groundedness, feeling that connectedness to something here in the world and here in the way we're creating things, it allows there to be space for this very open-minded, flowing energetic of Gemini that is just all about experimentation, asking questions, being totally open-minded and not jumping to conclusions. And I just love this energy. And I think a lot of us are really, really needing this influx of Gemini energy at this time, because I think we can all agree the last several years have been very dense. I think that's the word that I would describe the last few years. It's been very, very dense. It continues to have a density to it in the world and the things that are happening at the collective level and just some of the deep questions that we're moving through. And that denseness has left many of us feeling a little bit exhausted. We're out of spoons. We're out of new inspiration. We might be kind of going back and forth between feeling very vibrant and alive and having aha moments and then feeling that density again. And one of the things that Gemini is really great at is taking us out of that feeling of density. And in doing that, I think Gemini allows there to be space to do some of the visioning that we need to do that's so far beyond maybe like some of the things we're moving through in real time, right here, right now, that are valid, that are important. I will all say time and again, context and what's going on in our physical worlds matters. It does affect us. It does affect our bodies. It does affect our ability to access different things. I will always stand behind that. But I do think many of us are longing for a little bit of spaciousness, a little bit of this mutable air energy that is about just asking questions, experimenting, playing around, floating on the breeze, feeling some of that lightness, that freedom. And I think many of us, this is where we're going to be refueling our system. Sometimes people talk about Gemini as kind of being exhausting because it's so busy. It's very mental energy. It's associated with this idea of words and communication. And yes, we can get all caught up in that busy energetic. But I also think that actually the thing is, if you've been moving through dense energy, having that playful, open-minded energy that's just like, what happens if I do this? What if I don't need to make a perfect, correct decision for my life? What if I just let myself flow? What if I trust that as I change my mind from day to day, as I play around with different perspectives on what I need, on what feels good, as I allow myself to know that I might feel that I want this thing this week, and that might change tomorrow. It might change next week. It might change in 5 years. I don't know, but I have the space to let myself change my mind. I have the space to be open-minded toward myself and what I want. That is very supportive, and it can actually make us feel a lot calmer, a lot more a lot safer to be in this strange world that is so unpredictable, that is so energetically busy. It actually gives us the tools to be here in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. And that's really the intuitive theme of this entire Gemini season. How do we support and facilitate thinking experimentally, thinking with flexibility, thinking with a certain type of open-mindedness, first and foremost toward ourselves? Are we open-minded towards ourselves and how our minds might be changing, how what we think about who we are and what categories we fit into might be changing and morphing? I think many of us, as we practice that, are going to find that identities and titles and ways we presented ourselves are going through a season of change, and that we're kind of meeting ourselves in new ways all over again. And so the big intuitive theme for this Gemini season is going to be open-mindedness towards yourself and also to others. But when we're open-minded towards ourselves, I think the judgment goes away towards ourselves, and that actually releases judgment for others as well. Also, I would say this Gemini season is about that unimaginable horizon, because it's really a time of letting our imaginations take us to some interesting places, and also knowing that ingredients are coming in that we just have not imagined for ourselves yet, things that we didn't even know we were longing for, things we didn't even know we were needing, and ingredients that will surprise, delight, and interest us, and just allowing ourselves to feel a little bit more connected to that feeling. And then finally, I think that Gemini is about creating space to hold multiple aspects of yourselves, including parts of ourselves that maybe feels like we're not allowed to have both, but that we can, that we're making space for all of those elements to be here at the party, and that we're allowed to have multiple different viewpoints all within ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that once again, we're not trying to make just the perfect decision so that our life goes in lockstep. We're trying to experiment with what feels truest in the moment and being open-minded toward that. So that's really what this season is about. I could just kind of wax poetic on that for a long time, but let's talk about a few of the transits and why these themes are coming up so strongly for me. I think the central thing we're going to be looking at here for this Gemini season is honestly Jupiter, because Jupiter is moving into Gemini on May 26th. Jupiter has been in Taurus since May of last year. So just over a year, just about a year, it's been in Taurus. And we've been doing all of this exploring in that root system, in what makes us feel stable, in what nourishes our body. We might have even been experiencing some contrasts in that department because we've been figuring out what works for us physically, what works for us in the way we feel well, what makes us feel wealthy in our lives. And that's often things like peace and quiet and good relationships and community and sense of place. We've been exploring all of that. Now, as Jupiter moves into Gemini, shortly after the sun moves into Gemini, we are starting an entire new year of exploration and looking at how we want to start thinking differently and how we want to open our minds to what is possible next. I'm going to make a whole chat about Jupiter and Gemini, so keep an eye out for that. It'll come out shortly before that happens, before the 26th. But that's really going to be driving so much of the energy of Gemini season, because we are now going to be starting to explore this new horizon. And it's like our eyes are opening to a whole thing that we haven't been able to totally access for the last few years as we've been moving through some of this denser energy. We also have these beautiful moons this month. We're going to have the Sag full moon on the 23rd, right before Jupiter shifts over. Sag full moon is where it's at. There's also a video going to be out about that. What process do you need to show up to in your life? Just what process can you just say, yep, I'm going to need to go through this process? That's what that full moon is going to be asking and showing. And then the new moon in Gemini on the June 6th is going to be conjunct Venus. So how do you want to have fun? How do you want to feel joy? How do you want to refill your spoons? And that theme is just going to keep coming up And it even feels a little taboo, right? To just be thinking about like, what brings me joy? What makes me feel good? How do I be open-minded to myself? How do I just let myself exist in this world? Because it's such an intense world we're living in right now. The questions are deep, they're heavy, they're intense. But I just think that it's just going to keep coming up as a theme as we move through these energetics. And a lot of us are just going to be meeting ourselves for the first time all over again during this Gemini season. I'm so interested to see how that's going to feel. So let me know what you're thinking, what you're feeling as we step into this next season. I'm curious. I always love to finish these chats with a little bit of a tarot, intuitive feel through. Give ourselves a little bit of space to see what is coming in at this time. For this Gemini season just gives me goosebumps. It gives me butterflies in the tummy, which a butterfly feels like a really good representation of Gemini energy as well. That mutable, changeable energy, but it just feels exciting somehow. Queen of Pentacles. I love it. I think this is a strange thing, but I'm gonna pull 3 cards, because that's just what I feel like doing. And so that's what we're going to do. Sometimes I pull 4, sometimes I pull 2. 6 of Wands. Yes. This just is making a lot of sense for me already. Just as I see this and I look at this and I'm feeling this, it's really interesting to see what wants to come out. Oh, okay. You know what? I said that I was only going to pull 3 cards and then 2 more cards came out. So we're pulling 4. Okay. The world has spoken, and that was the 5 of Swords and the Queen of Cups. Okay. We're beginning and ending with queens here, and I love it. Couldn't ask for anything better than that. So starting with Queen of Pentacles. This makes me think about this Taurus season we've just been through. The grounding there, the building of self-trust. That's like one of the crucial things about Queen of Pentacles. And I think, this grounding theme, very useful with Gemini energy. It's great to just have some grounding practices when you're working with mutable air, because you can just end up floating off in the wind and you won't even know where you are, what direction you're looking. So it's very helpful. And I think this is a reminder here that finding your footing is important. And the crucial message that comes up every time I see Queen of Pentacles is trusting yourself, trusting you'll make decisions and you'll respond to life appropriately as the process continues. So many of us just need to hear that and know that. And so many of us can trust ourselves. We've learned a lot in this lifetime so far. We've gotten burnt a few times, we've crashed and burned a few times. And because of that, we've learned where some of our limits are, where some of our preferences are. We've learned to trust that we will figure out how we want to respond to scenarios as they come. So it's a reminder here to really affirm that. Create safety for yourself in whatever questions you're asking right now by feeling safe to know that as the process continues, as the experimentation continues, you will continue to respond in ways that respect yourself. I love that message. The Queen of Pentacles really shows up for that intuitive, safe knowing in ourselves. This is what's so interesting. And I think this is where Gemini energy gets really fascinating to me, because there is this kind of dual expansion contraction, this dual aha and then ooh, I don't know, kind of energetic that happens when we're working with mutable energies. And I think specifically with Gemini, because it's so experimental and it's so playful and it will just show us 2 sides of a coin. So on the one hand, we have this 6 of Wands energy, which is about breakthrough. It's about, I figured something out. Something's clicked into place. It's not the final aha of life. It's not the, I've sorted it all out. This like mythological thing that we were supposed to have done at some point in our adulthood where just everything's settled out. No, we don't have a card for that. But it is like that moment when maybe we've been through a really hard season or we've been working on something and we haven't been able to figure out, where there's a light bulb moment and we're like, oh, okay, I get it. I know what I'm going to do next. I know how I want to move next. But I think it's interesting. It's followed up directly after by the 5 of Swords, which is a sense of not totally feeling like we can trust ourselves or our instincts. And I think this is really interesting because I think this is often the way it goes, right? When we have just we're saying, yeah, I think I know what I'm going to do next. This is how I'm going to move forward. But it's new territory. We've never been here before. We've never seen this before. It is going to bring up the parts of ourselves that aren't sure, that maybe don't know. Is it right? Is this what I need to be doing? Is this how this feels? And really what you have to do with these two energies working here together side by side is understand this is an innate part of the process. I think that there's this thing going on in the spiritual world and even in this conversation about intuition where it's like there's this perfect form of intuition. And it does kind of exist. It can happen where you just know and you do something and you can follow it, of course. But I also think that having that standard for our intuition cuts us off from the process of sorting through the experimentation. Sometimes we need to just like say yes to something and put our foot out there and feel through the uncertainties and the unknowns of it and just know that there's going to be a little bit of discomfort. Now, where our process comes in is going to be figuring out what discomfort is the really icky, I can't do this, and what is the discomfort that's I've just never done this before. That's a whole other conversation. But I think knowing that these two often go together is just really helpful. It makes it feel less like you're doing something wrong if you get a Five of Swords feeling and you're not really quite sure what's what and how you feel about it. And part of our job here working with Gemini, working with the energy we're going to be playing with this season is going to just be about trying things out and then listening. Trying things out and then listening. And maybe sometimes it'll feel like, aha, fireworks, perfect. And sometimes it'll feel like, ooh, I'm not sure. And that is part of the experimentation. That's part of the open-mindedness about building trust with ourselves. And then, of course, we have Queen of Cups at the end here, the Queen of Intuition, and a different kind of intuition. You know, this is really about a deep listening to that quiet, still voice. I think Queen of Pentacles is kind of like trust, just building trust in ourselves, knowing we're going to make the right choice, listening into our bodies. And the Queen of Cups is a little bit more diffuse. It's like that quieter knowing that sometimes takes a little bit of time to bring up to the surface. So it's also a reminder not to jump to conclusions this Gemini season. We might have a lot of things moving through and all sorts of ideas moving through, but it's okay if we don't know, if we feel really uncertain, to take our time and take a look around and listen for the still small voice. We don't have to rush through Gemini season, despite the fact that it's a very active energy. And I think that the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups is reminding us of that water and earth energy is saying, while you might have so many ideas, so much movement, so many things moving around, coming back to the quiet is a great way to help foster the beauty of that Gemini energy by balancing it out a little bit. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting one. As usual, when I'm doing these season videos, I just feel like I am rambling around, wandering through the forest, just seeing what catches my eye. I never really know where these conversations are fully going to take me. And I'm always like, oh, I'm just going to make a short chat. And then, you know, just give like a little taste. And then I end up spending 20 minutes like talking for ages about everything. So if you are sitting here with me for this long, tell me, what do you love about this season? What are you noticing are themes coming up for you? And have you also been feeling the density that's been around in the world the last few years? And how are you feeling about it now? I want to hear. I'm really, really curious about this topic because I think it's hitting so many of us and yet it's hard to put words to. So I'd be really curious to hear what you have to say. If you enjoy doing tarot readings with me and just sitting and reflecting and feeling through things, I highly recommend coming over to my Patreon. We have the entire series of Journey Through the Major Arcana pretty much all out there, so you can catch up on all of those episodes. And I just walk us through the entire Major Arcana and have a great time exploring those archetypes, those themes, and bringing those energies to life so that we can call on them when we need them and embrace our tarot practices and our unique way of seeing. You can also enjoy all the extra resources I have there. Every single week I bring out more resources. So I'd love to see you there. I love it when you're here. I love this space. I love how it's changed and transformed over the last few years, and it's just meant so much. So like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Help help this little YouTuber out in bringing her messages out to the world. And I hope to see you for our next conversation. We're going to be talking about the Sag full moon, and I'm really excited. It's my favorite full moon of the year, maybe. Probably. It's up there. Top 5 for sure. Anyway, I will see you also very soon. Have a beautiful beginning to Gemini season.